Hey, I'm Camden, 28, and I've been calling Denver home for the last 6 months. I work from home as a front-end developer for a small, dependable tech company. It's not flashy, but it keeps the bills paid. And honestly, I enjoy it most of the time. I landed here after a tough breakup, craving a fresh start. New city, new faces. When I first arrived, I didn't know a soul. So I started hitting the gym, not just to get fit, but to feel a bit more alive. Working remotely can make you feel like you're fading into the background. The gym I go to is bright, clean, and packed with people who look like they live for fitness. I usually keep to myself, do my reps, and head out. But one day, everything shifted. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, and the place was buzzing. I'd just finished a grueling leg session and stopped by the lounge area to grab my protein shake from my bag. My phone pinged, a Slack message naturally. And as I bent down, tugged the zipper open, and grabbed the bottle with one hand while glancing at the screen with the other, I didn't notice someone walking by. My elbow bumped the bottle's lid off, and the whole shake, chocolate, thick, and very much not invisible, splashed across someone's workout leggings. "Oh, damn, I'm so sorry," I said, leaping up, mortified. She stopped, glanced at her drenched leg, then looked at me. I braced for anger, maybe a lecture, but instead she raised an eyebrow and laughed. Guess I needed an excuse to wash these anyway. She was striking. Not in a loud social media way, but with a real grounded beauty. Mature, confident, sharp, with light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and piercing green eyes. Even with my shake all over her, she radiated this unshakable calm. "I didn't see you," I stammered. I was glued to my phone like a moron. I scrambled for something to clean up the mess. She waved it off. "Chill, it happens. Besides," she said, tilting her head, "you remind me of my husband when he was younger." I blinked. That's nice?" She smiled. "It's a compliment, don't worry." I gave a nervous laugh. "Well, I hope he also had terrible aim and worse multitasking skills." She laughed again, and the air felt different. She wasn't upset, not even mildly annoyed, just entertained. I realized I'd been holding my breath since the spill. "I'm Rowena," she said, extending her hand. "Camden?" I replied, shaking it. We talked for maybe 2 minutes, just long enough for me to apologize again and for her to insist it was no big deal. Then she waved and headed to the locker rooms. I stood there, watching her go, wondering what had just happened. For the next few days, she didn't show up. I figured she might have switched gyms, changed her schedule, or maybe she'd just been passing through. I told myself to let it go. It was a fleeting moment. But 3 days later, there she was, gliding on the Stairmaster with earbuds in, looking effortlessly poised. I was on my way to the free weights when I spotted her. For a split second, I considered pretending I hadn't seen her to dodge the awkwardness. But then she glanced up and smiled. 3 days had passed, and I'd found myself scanning the cardio section every time I walked into the gym. Don't ask why, you know why. Still, I told myself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But there she was again. Same machine, same elegance, same focus. This time she saw me first. I felt it before I looked, like a nudge in my mind. I turned, and sure enough, Rowena was smiling at me mid-step, like we were old pals crossing paths. I gave a small wave and was about to keep walking when her voice cut through her earbuds. "So, got another shake ready?" I laughed. "Only if you're craving a chocolate shower." She slowed the machine just enough for us to talk. I leaned against the side of the next stairmaster, trying not to be that guy who lingers but unable to walk away. "Do you usually come around now?" I asked. "Yeah, it's quieter than evenings," she said. "Plus, fewer kids filming TikToks." I grinned. "Guilty. Except I'm 28, so I just missed the TikTok crowd." She tilted her head. "28, huh?" I nodded. She smiled but didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I'm 40. I paused, caught off guard by her directness. "Really? Wouldn't have guessed." She raised an eyebrow. Smooth answer. We both laughed, and then the conversation just flowed. I learned she worked in publishing, editing fiction manuscripts for a mid-sized firm focused on first-time authors. She asked about my job, and I told her about the usual front-end grind. JavaScript, Figma, meetings that should have been emails. I joked. "Ever read a book and wish you could rewrite the ending?" She smiled. "All the time." There was an ease between us. Nothing forced, not quite flirty. Just two people talking with that rare rhythm when no one's trying too hard. Eventually, her machine beeped, and she stepped off, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I should stretch," she said, grabbing her towel. "You heading out?" "Still got chest and arms to destroy," I said. "Good luck," she replied, then paused. "If you're ever up for coffee after a workout, as a peace offering for the shake incident, there's a spot nearby." "Coffee sounds great," I said. She smiled, softer this time. "See you around, Camden." She walked off, and I caught myself grinning like a fool. Not because I thought it was romantic, but because I hadn't felt that kind of lightness in ages. That night, I told myself not to overthink it. She was older, likely divorced, probably just being friendly. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she just liked meeting someone new. But then I saw her the next day, and the day after, and we kept talking, each time a little longer. Until one morning after a cardio session, we left the gym together, side by side, like it was the most natural thing. The sun was rising behind us. She glanced over and said, "Just so you know, I'm not complicated." "I've done that already." I nodded. "Yeah, me too." She studied my face for a moment, like she was looking for something. "I'm divorced, no kids, and I keep my life simple now." I stopped walking. "I'm not here to make things messy. I just like this, us talking." She smiled. "Good." We walked in silence for a bit before she added, "You remind me of my ex sometimes. Not in a bad way, like how he was when we first met. Before the distance, before the routine, before he stopped seeing me." I didn't know how to respond, so I just walked beside her, quiet. But I felt the air shift between us. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was real. Human. It was a Saturday morning when we finally grabbed that coffee. We'd run into each other at the gym again, naturally. Early session, mostly empty. She'd just finished cardio. I was half awake, chugging water, praying my pre-workout caffeine would hit, before I collapsed mid-set. She waved, I waved back, and without much fanfare she said, "Coffee after?" No pressure, just caffeine and chat. "Sure," I said. "Who doesn't love small talk with sore legs?" She laughed. "Exactly." We strolled to a cozy cafe around the block, the kind with exposed brick, hanging plants, and a barista who probably wrote poetry during downtime. It was early, so the place was quiet, and we snagged a corner table by the window. Rowena ordered an oat milk cappuccino. I got black coffee, no fuss. She raised an eyebrow at my order. Let me guess. You think real coffee drinkers take it plain? Sugar's for the weak. I replied with mock seriousness. Only the weak. She smirked. You're funnier outside the gym. Just better hydrated, I said. That broke the ice again. Something about sitting across from her, away from gym noise and fluorescent lights, felt different. Not romantic exactly, but not just casual either. I asked, do you edit thrillers? Romance? Sci-fi? A bit of everything, she said, stirring her cappuccino. Mostly new adult fiction. Stories about people in their 20s figuring themselves out. Ironic, huh? Not really, I said. Feels like we're all still doing that, no matter the age. She looked at me. True, I'm 40, and sometimes I feel like I'm just starting to get it. There was no awkwardness in her tone, no fishing for compliments, just honesty. I hope I figure myself out before 40, I said, sipping my coffee. But I'm not betting on it. She chuckled, then gazed out the window. I was married for 10 years, she said. Got married at 27. He was great at first. Smart, steady, driven. The guy your parents dream you'll bring home. For a while, it was good. Really good. I listened quietly. But people change, she went on. Or maybe they just show who they are. I don't know. Somewhere along the line, we stopped seeing each other. Not physically. We lived together, shared a bed. But he stopped caring who I was. Not just tired from work indifference. Like I didn't matter anymore. I stayed silent, knowing this wasn't a story I needed to fix. Just here. I waited a long time before I left, she added, because I thought I could bring him back. The guy who held my hand in the car, made pancakes on Sundays, kissed me like I was still his favorite part of the day. Her voice wavered slightly, but she didn't break. She wasn't fragile. She was just honest. And now? I asked softly. Now, she said, leaning back. I'm okay. I like my job, love my quiet apartment. I don't miss anyone. Most of the time. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was the rare, comfortable kind. I took a breath. I don't have a marriage story, I said. But I was with someone for almost 4 years. Thought it was serious. Thought I was sure. She wasn't. Rowena nodded. That hurts too. We sat quietly, sipping coffee, watching people pass outside. Then I said, you know, I honestly thought you were like 32. She rolled her eyes, smiling. No, really. You don't look 40. In a good way. I know what you mean, she said. But it's funny. People say that like looking younger is the ultimate prize. I paused. Fair point, she grinned. I'll take it though. We laughed. At some point, she reached across the table. Casual, maybe brushing a crumb or touching the cup, and her fingers grazed mine. It was nothing and everything. In that fleeting moment, I saw a flicker in her eyes. Not desire, not yet, but maybe openness, something she hadn't felt in a while. She pulled her hand back and said, I forgot what that kind of attention feels like. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded. That was enough. We finished our drinks. She offered me a ride home. I declined, partly because I lived close, but mostly because I wanted to walk, to feel the air, to replay every word of that conversation. That night, I checked my phone, half expecting a text from her, even though we hadn't swapped numbers. We didn't need to. Something had started, small but real. The next week fell into a quiet rhythm. We didn't plan anything formal. We just kept showing up at the gym around the same time. Some days we talked for 5 minutes, others for 30. One day we stretched side by side on the mats and ended up swapping music recommendations for nearly an hour. It felt effortless, like we'd known each other for years. Yet there was this subtle tension, unspoken, a curiosity lingering, unacknowledged, but growing. It was a Thursday evening when things shifted. I'd just finished a shoulder and arm workout, nothing special, and was heading out when I saw her near the front doors, checking her phone. She looked up, gave a small smile. "Still standing?" she asked. "Barely," I said. She laughed. "Want to walk with me? I usually do a loop around the block to cool down." "Yeah, sure." We stepped outside and the air changed. The sky was heavy, grey. Within moments, a light rain started. Warm, spring rain, more refreshing than bothersome. "You okay with this?" I asked. "I don't melt," she said, already walking. We moved slowly, the city humming around us. Cars rolling by, neon signs flickering, raindrops tapping the pavement. She pulled up her hoodie. I didn't bother. Something about the rain made everything feel sharper, more alive. At one point, she asked what I thought about living alone in a new city. "It's quiet," I said. "Sometimes peaceful, sometimes lonely. But I think I needed it." She nodded. "I get that." Then came a deep, reflective silence. We slowed our steps. "You make me feel," she said suddenly. "Things I didn't plan on feeling again." I looked at her, surprised not by the words, but by the vulnerability in them. She wasn't someone who spoke lightly. "Rowena," I started. She stopped walking. We were near a quiet corner by a closed bookstore, rain pattering on the sidewalk, a streetlight humming above. "I'm not trying to complicate your life," she said. "I'm not dragging you into something messy." "You're not," I said. "I don't feel dragged. I just like being around you." She looked at me, really looked, and I saw it. Hesitation, hope, the fear of hoping. Her eyes were darker in the rain, hair slightly damp, lips parted like she might speak again. Instead, she stepped closer. "I don't do this," she whispered. "This isn't who I've been for a long time. I'm not trying to be anyone else," I said softly. "Just me." We stood there, close, the city fading away. Then she leaned in. It wasn't a cinematic kiss. No rush, no drama. It was soft, gentle, almost tentative, and I kissed her back. For that moment, there was no age gap, no hesitation, no questions. Just two people in the rain, holding something unexpected. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "I don't want to hide," she said. "You don't have to," I replied. "I mean, I don't want this to be something I pretend didn't happen." "It's not." She smiled, nervous but genuine. "Want to come in for tea or something?" "Tea sounds good," I said. We walked to her place slowly, like time didn't matter. The rain kept falling, but we barely noticed. That night, tea turned into a quiet talk on her couch, legs under blankets. Her worn copy of East of Eden on the coffee table. We didn't touch again. We didn't need to. Something had shifted, something deeper than lust or infatuation. The next morning, we texted for the first time. Nothing heavy. She sent a meme about muscle soreness. I sent a selfie looking like I'd been hit by a truck after leg day. She laughed. And from then on, we were in each other's lives, steady but without pressure. Over the next couple of weeks, we started meeting outside the gym. Breakfast after early workouts, a Saturday farmer's market, a movie night at her place with real butter popcorn and wine I couldn't pronounce. We never labeled what we were doing, But when I introduced her to the barista at my usual coffee shop as a friend, her smile hinted that the word didn't quite fit anymore. It wasn't until one Thursday evening, walking through her neighborhood after dinner, that we addressed it. "You know," she said, watching some teens skateboard by, "I used to think I'd never date again." "Because of your ex?" I asked. She shook her head. "Number. Because of how I let myself vanish in that relationship. I stopped being a woman. I became the person who kept the fridge stocked, paid the bills. I was there, but I wasn't seen. After a while, you start believing that's all you're worth." I didn't know what to say. Not because I felt nothing, but because I felt too much. So I took her hand. She held it gently. "But now," she said, glancing at me, "I feel like myself again. Like someone sees me. Like I'm allowed to feel young, desired, real." I stopped and faced her. "You are." "I do. And I'm done pretending this is casual." She looked at me like she'd been waiting for those words. Not because she needed permission, but because she finally felt safe. "So, what now?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "We live," I said simply. "No hiding, no overthinking, just us." And that's what we did. From then on, we stopped being subtle. We went to the gym together, side by side. I noticed eyes on us sometimes, especially from regulars who'd seen us before, but not as a pair. I braced for judgment. Whispers about the age gap, lingering stares. But it never came. There was curiosity, maybe surprise, but then acceptance, and eventually, normalcy. We were just a couple. A man and a woman who liked lifting weights, joking over overpriced smoothies, debating movies. When we kissed in public, no one flinched. No one cared. We weren't a scandal. We were just right. Her friends were curious when she introduced me. A few were skeptical. One even asked if I was a face. Rowena shut it down with quiet confidence. "No, he's not a face. He's Camden." My circle was simpler. No big family to explain things to. Just a few co-workers, old friends and my sister, who called after seeing a photo of us on Instagram. "She's older, huh?" she said. "Yeah." "She makes you smile like that every day." "Yeah." "Then I don't care if she's 60. Don't mess it up." Months passed. We learned each other's habits, moods, coffee orders. She left a toothbrush at my place. I stocked oat milk in my fridge. I learned she hated cilantro. She discovered I secretly loved cheesy Hallmark movies, but faked disdain for them. We didn't rush to move in together or talk about rings or kids or long-term plans. That wasn't us. We just chose each other, day after day, in small, honest ways. She taught me patience. I reminded her what it felt like to be chosen for being exactly herself. Somewhere along the way, I realized this wasn't a fling or a rebound or her chasing youth. This was real. This was a love. One Sunday morning, we sat on her balcony. She was barefoot, in one of my hoodies, sipping coffee with a sleepy smile. The city was still, that rare quiet where you feel like the only ones awake. She looked at me and said, "Do you think we'll always be like this?" I thought for a moment. "I hope not," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "I hope it gets even better." She smiled. "Me too." I leaned over, kissed her forehead and pulled her close. We didn't need more than that. We didn't care what anyone thought. We weren't hiding. "Greetings. I'm Jake, 28 years old, employed in residential contracting, which essentially means home renovations." I've been at it for several years now. The pay is solid, but truthfully, it's the diverse array of people I encounter on the job that keeps it engaging. On the topic of people, I'd like to share a story about someone I never anticipated crossing paths with again, and even less so the events that unfolded afterward. 4 years back, I was in a relationship with a woman named Sarah. We were both 24, just out of college. She had a sharp wit, ambition, and an effortless ability to brighten any space. I fell for her quickly, and I believed she felt the same. But things unraveled. Small disputes, misunderstandings, and conflicting visions for our futures took their toll. Perhaps we were too young, or maybe just too incompatible. Regardless, it didn't end in a fiery argument, but in a quiet drift. She stopped responding, and I didn't chase her. Life continued. I immersed myself in work, went on a few casual dates, nothing significant. Then, about a month ago, I stopped by a small strip mall just outside town to pick up some paint samples. As I headed back to my truck, I noticed a car with its hood raised and a woman inside, clearly exasperated, striking the steering wheel. She seemed on the verge of breaking down. As I approached, I stopped in my tracks. It was Alice, Sarah's mother. I hadn't seen her since the breakup, yet she looked remarkably unchanged, poised, self-assured, with that timeless, composed elegance. But now, she was visibly irritated by her stalled car. She turned, spotted me, blinked, and then smiled. "Jake," she said, "you're still around?" I chuckled lightly. "Yeah, still here. Need a hand?" She stood, wiping her hands on a napkin. "It just quit on me, no warning, and I'm clueless about what's under the hood." I offered to check it out. The issue was minor, a loose battery connection. I secured it, and the car started immediately. She looked genuinely impressed. "You haven't changed? Still coming to the rescue?" I shrugged. "Only when there's a wrench involved." There was a brief pause, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was surprising. She gazed at me as if seeing an old friend in a new light. Then she smiled again, this time with more warmth. "Want to grab a coffee?" "My treat. I owe you." It caught me off guard. I hesitated briefly but agreed. We walked to a cafe 2 blocks away, sat by the window, ordered lattes, and talked. Honestly, I was amazed at how effortless it felt. We didn't mention Sarah immediately. The conversation revolved around work, life, her garden, my dog, and the weather. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "You know, you really should have been my son-in-law." I looked up, startled. "Excuse me?" "I mean it," she continued. "You were good for her, steady, kind, genuine." I was disappointed when it ended. I gave an awkward smile. "We weren't exactly built to last, I suppose." She nodded slowly. "Maybe not then." Another pause followed, but this one carried a different weight. Her gaze lingered a moment longer than expected. Then she leaned back, sipped her coffee, and said, "But things change. People change." We talked for over 2 hours. By the end, we were both surprised by how natural it felt. I walked her to her car. Before she got in, she touched my arm lightly. "I meant what I said," she told me. "You were one of the good ones." I smiled. "Thanks, Alice. Today was nice, really nice." She started the engine, and before driving off, she looked at me and said, "Let's not wait another 4 years." That evening, I texted her. "Today was unexpectedly great. Tell me I'm not the only one who felt that." She replied almost instantly, "No, you're not." We didn't text incessantly after that first coffee, but the exchanges were enough, casual, respectful, yet with an undercurrent of something unspoken, a curiosity we weren't ready to explore fully. A week later, she invited me for coffee again. Same cafe, same window seat. She called it a neutral zone, and I agreed. This time, she seemed more at ease, less like Sarah's mother and more like Alice, just a woman. The conversation picked up seamlessly. We discussed books, music, and places we'd always wanted to visit but hadn't. She teased that I'd probably hate Florence with someone who stops for photos every 5 feet. I countered that I'd manage as long as there was espresso. She smiled, and for a moment, it felt like we were decades younger, unburdened by complications. At one point, she said, "I forgot how easy it is to talk to you. No pretending, no performance." That resonated deeply because, with most people, I felt compelled to present a curated version of myself. With her, I didn't. At the end of that second coffee, I offered to walk her to her car. It was chilly, and she hadn't brought a coat, so I lent her mine. When we reached her car, she held onto the jacket a little longer than necessary before returning it. "Want to come over for tea? It's just 5 minutes from here." There was a pause, long enough for us both to grasp the weight of her invitation, or what it might imply. "I'll come," I said, "just for tea." Her home was much the same. Tidy shelves adorned with candles and travel books, the air scented with fresh linen and vanilla. She put the kettle on and lit a small candle on the table. We sat across from each other, the tea untouched. Alice leaned forward, her expression gentle but searching. "I don't want to mess anything up. I know this is strange." I nodded. "It is, but it's not bad." Then she said quietly, as if the words frightened her, "It's not supposed to feel this good." I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. Instead, I reached across the table and touched her hand. She didn't pull away. She turned her hand over, intertwining her fingers with mine. That was the first time we touched in a way that wasn't merely polite. It was real. We didn't kiss that night. There was no rush, no chaos, just a quiet, mutual understanding. When I left, she walked me to the door. We stood there briefly, each waiting for the other to speak. I broke the silence. "I like this," she nodded. "Me too." I drove home with both windows down, the cold air bracing. I needed the clarity to process what had just happened. The next morning she texted, "Thank you for not making it weird, for not making me feel ridiculous." I replied, "You made it feel like the most natural thing in the world." From then on, we stopped pretending. It wasn't casual, but it wasn't defined either. We met a few times a week, sometimes for walks in the park, sometimes sitting in her backyard in silence. We didn't tell anyone, not out of shame, but because it felt private, as if sharing it would diminish its magic. One evening, on her back porch with a blanket draped over our knees, I asked, "Do you ever think this is crazy?" "All the time," she answered without hesitation. "Do you want to stop?" She looked at me for a long moment. "No." I didn't either. The secrecy made it feel normal over time, as if it wasn't a secret at all. The more I was with Alice, the less odd it seemed, the more it felt like home. We weren't sneaking around like teenagers or playing at something fleeting. We genuinely enjoyed each other, cooking together, discussing books, laughing at silly commercials. There was no facade, but we both knew this couldn't be fully open yet. One Sunday afternoon, I arrived with takeout and found her barefoot in the kitchen. music playing from a counter speaker. She was dancing, not to impress or be charming, just moving because it felt right. I watched her briefly before she noticed me. "Hungry?" she asked, still swaying slightly. "Starving, but that looks better than dumplings," I said, placing the bag on the table. She blushed, but kept dancing. Then she reached out, pulling me toward her. We danced. I hadn't done that in years and felt both absurd and liberated. Later, we sat on the couch, eating and watching reruns of an old comedy show. Her feet rested on my lap, my hand lightly on her shin. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, sighed, and set it face down. "Sarah," she said without prompting. "Everything okay?" I asked, unsure if I wanted the answer. "She's coming to town next weekend. Wants to meet for lunch, just her and me." I nodded, keeping my thoughts to myself. "She doesn't know anything," Alice added, "and she doesn't need to." I agreed, but a knot tightened in my stomach. Sarah, the unspoken presence. I hadn't seen her in 4 years. Yet I could still recall the way her voice sharpened in anger or softened with pride. I didn't miss her, not anymore, but I couldn't ignore her place in this equation. "Are we doing something wrong?" I asked. Alice turned to me. "Wrong? Number unusual, yes, but we're not hurting anyone." It was hard to dispute, though guilt doesn't always heed reason. The next week felt slightly different. Not worse, just more grounded. We weren't in a bubble anymore. She met Sarah on Saturday. I didn't hear from her all day. That evening, she called. "She's fine," Alice said. "Happy, I think. Still with that guy from Boston." "Did she ask about me?" "She did. I said I hadn't seen you in years." I exhaled. "Thank you." There was a pause. Then she asked, "Do you ever wish we'd met under different circumstances?" I considered it. Number. The strangeness of this makes it feel honest. We're not here because it's convenient. We're here because we want to be. She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I'm glad it's you." After that call, we saw each other more. Not out of necessity, but desire. Once, while fixing a chair in her garage, I caught her watching me, as if committing the moment to memory. When I asked why, she said, "Nothing. Just stay like that for a second." We didn't set rules or labels, but something was growing. Steady. Certain. For the first time in years, I didn't brace for disappointment. I felt chosen. Still, we were cautious. No public affection, no shared friends, no mistakes. It was a fragile balance. One misplaced text or sighting could unravel everything. But the risk amplified the quiet moments, like sitting on her porch at midnight, barely speaking, or finding a note in my jacket. "I made soup. Come by if you're hungry, or if you're not." It was intimacy in its truest form, no performance, no pressure, just being. One night, sprawled on her living room rug after a movie, she whispered, "I don't think I've felt this peaceful in years." "Same," I said. "I've never felt it with anyone before." She turned to me. "That means something, doesn't it?" "Yeah," I replied. "It means this matters." Something shifted that night. We didn't voice it, but we both knew. This wasn't just reconnection. It carried weight. And with weight came internal questions. 2 weeks later, driving to her place, I got a text. "Parked 2 blocks down. Neighbors might notice your truck again." I stared at it longer than I should have. It wasn't anger, it was reality seeping in. We were hiding something good, and it was starting to hurt. I parked as requested, walked through the cold. When she opened the door, she looked weary. Not physically, but emotionally. Still radiant, still her, but different. We sat in the kitchen, no music. Sarah texted again, she said. Wants to visit for the weekend. Might stay here. I nodded. Makes sense. I'll need you to disappear for a few days. I understood, but it stung. I forced a smile. She touched my wrist. This isn't easy for me either. I believed her, but I realized secrets, even good ones, take a toll. Sarah arrived that Friday. I stayed away. No texts, no calls. 3 full days. I kept busy with work, friends, even a bar I usually avoided. But nothing felt right. On Monday night, a text from Alice. Come if you want. Doors open. I was there in 20 minutes. She was in the backyard, wrapped in a sweater, by a small fire pit. I sat beside her, silent. She spoke first. She mentioned you. What did she say? That she sometimes wonders what would have happened if you'd tried again. That hung between us. I told her I hadn't seen you in years, didn't know what you were doing. Thank you, I said. I know that wasn't easy. She turned to me. Do you regret this? Us? I shook my head. No, but I hate hiding. She nodded. Me too. That night, we didn't sleep. Not in that sense. We lay in her bed, facing each other awake, talking about regrets, fears, hopes. I admitted I once thought I wasn't built for lasting relationships, always leaving before things got real. She said, You didn't run this time. Not yet, I replied. She smiled, her eyes softening for the first time in days. Later that week, something unexpected happened. Leaving her house, I saw her talking to a neighbor, an older woman I vaguely recalled. As I passed, the woman's gaze lingered, not suspicious, just curious. That evening, Alice said, I think she knows something. Does it matter? I asked. She hesitated. Not unless it reaches Sarah. I saw a flicker of panic in her face. We set a rule that night. No weekday visits, only weekends. Fewer patterns, less risk. We even crafted a cover story in case Sarah found out. I helped with repairs. We got close. Nothing more. It felt absurd to rehearse a lie for something so honest, but we did it to protect what we had. One Saturday, we drove to a lake 2 hours away, where no one knew us. We walked, sat by the water, held hands openly for the first time. It felt odd, not because of her age or our past, but because I'd forgotten what it was like to be with someone without vigilance. On the drive back, she said, today felt like a real day. It was a real day, I told her. We stopped for burgers, ate in the car, windows down, music playing, laughing at nothing. For a moment, we weren't a secret. Just 2 people who cared for each other. But pulling into her driveway, we grew quiet. The spell had to break. Before I got out, she grabbed my hand. I don't want to keep pretending. Then let's not, I said. We didn't define what that meant, but the air between us thickened, became more tangible, as if we were edging towards something unnamed but undeniable. 7 months had passed since I saw her by that stalled car. 7 months of quiet nights, hidden smiles and small moments that became something profound. Our connection never spiraled into drama or recklessness. It was steady, serene, and entirely ours. We never told Sarah, not out of fear, but to preserve her relationship with Alice. What we had didn't need the world's approval. It was private, real. I still parked a block away most days, more habit than necessity. Sunday mornings were sacred. She'd make coffee and read while I tinkered in the garage, often on things that didn't need fixing. It was peaceful, familiar, our rhythm. We'd take drives to small towns, empty roads, dusty antique stores. She'd rest her hand on mine over the gear shift, natural as breathing. And it was. We questioned things sometimes. She'd ask, "Will you wake up one day wishing you were with someone your age?" I'd ask, "Do you think people would ever accept this?" The answers weren't tidy, but honest. "No," I'd say, "because no one's ever seen me like you do." She'd reply, "That's all I ever wanted, to be seen." That grounded us. One day, we ran into Megan, an old college friend, while having lunch downtown. She approached, curious but not judgmental. Alice, composed, introduced herself as a friend. After Megan left, Alice asked, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "You?" She nodded. "Let them wonder. I'm too old to care." I laughed. "And I'm too young to explain." It became our private jest. We cherished the simplicity. No labels, no expectations, just presence. We weren't hiding from shame, but protecting something rare. Over dinner one night, she asked, "Where do you see this going?" It wasn't a test. She genuinely wanted to know. I set my fork down. "I don't know, but I want to keep showing up. I want this, whatever it is." She took my hand. "That's enough for me." We stopped planning a future that needed a blueprint, living one day, one laugh at a time. We built something not everyone would grasp, but that never mattered. Then came her birthday. I arrived early to make breakfast. Flowers, candles, soft music. She entered the kitchen half asleep and paused, taking it in. "This is the first time in years someone's done something for me without me asking," she said. I smiled. "Get used to it." She approached, hugged me, and whispered, "You can stop calling me your secret." I looked at her. "You sure?" She nodded. "I want to live fully, not halfway." From that day, we stopped hiding. We didn't broadcast it, but we stopped pretending. I brought her to a small dinner with friends. We sat together. People noticed, some whispered, some smiled. No one asked, and we didn't explain. Love doesn't need a label to be valid or permission to be real. Alice and I are still together, still quiet, still laughing at bad commercials, making soup on rainy days, reading side by side. We've carved out a small, unseen life in the margins where it feels most alive. We don't post photos or seek approval, but every morning when she reaches for my hand, I know it's right. No drama, no crescendo, just love. Soft, patient, fiercely real. That's how it ended, and that's how it remains.